In nomine di nostri Satane Luciferi Excelsi, in domus Deorum et Ausium, in domus Deorum et Ausium. Hail, Baal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am going to discuss King Baal with you. Kind of give you a little bit of a backdrop for those of you who do not know who King Baal is, where he came from, and what he was about. Okay? Or is about, I should say. So why don't we talk a little bit about some grimoires real fast. The treatise of angel magic relates, or at least connects, Baal with the power of the East. That's right, the power of the East, meaning he's one of the four cardinal directions, or at least one of the rulers of the cardinal directions. The Pseudo Nomarchia Daemonum, I probably just butchered the hell out of that name on that one. Baal is spelled Baal, with as in Baell. Okay, sometimes with a couple dots over the E. Okay, for parentheses type thing within this grimoire. And here he is considered to be the first king of the East. The first king. Not the second, not the last, but the first. Okay? He has 66 legions of lesser spirits underneath him, and most importantly, he can make the practitioner invisible. The Goetia by Dr. Rudd simply relates the angel known as Vahuzja, and this is a weird ass spelling because of its Vehujah is how it was spelled. Just to let you know, you can look this being up for yourself if you want to get into angel magic and sorcery. Personally, anything to do with the enemy encampment, I say fuck you. But his name, this being here, is said to have power over Baal. Okay. Now, what's ironic here is that the Canaanite god, meaning Lord, is both associated with the cult of Baal, which is something that's a very old cult, I should say, kind of like the cult of Anubis or the cult of Artemis, if you think about it, if you want to get into Greek and Egyptian mythology. Okay, the Christian and Jewish culture, they basically demonized him because to him, you had two different offsprings here, and I'll get into this as to why. Because it plays into a huge, how should I say this, a huge perspective of Baal, okay? And I know a lot of people have been curious about Astaroth as well. But when we get into the Sumerian, how should I say this, the Syria and Persian mythologies, we see how these two beings are associated, especially within Babylonian, Sumerian, and Mesopotamian traditions, not just Syriac or, Persian, okay? Which is kind of cool because of the fact that in 2 Kings chapter 1, 2, 3, and 16, his title is said to be Prince Baal, okay? And led to his name being associated with Beelzebub or Baalzebub. Okay, basically roughly translated Lord of Flies. Okay, in Numbers 25, verse 3, and most importantly, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 3, his name is given to mean, how should I say, or as I should say, associated with another well known goetic demon by the name of Belphegor. Okay, it basically gave rise to Baal being known as Belphegor, not just Beelzebub, a connection to Baalzebub, meaning Lord of Lies, but here we have Belphegor being introduced as a possible connection. Yet in the point, how should I say this? The plural term, he is translated into being Baalim, okay, Baalim, okay, which is echoed into the infernal literature as meaning a great demon of hell, or being viewed as a great demon of hell. That is something that is very interesting. And when we get into what is known as the Les Farfadets, it's a French grimoire, by the way. This introduces Baal Bereth as being a minister of treaties. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is that in many Semitic languages, Baal means Lord. Okay. But when we get into Bereth as being the Hebrew meaning covenant. Okay. Now, in the biblical term, we see where both the covenant between God and the Israelites, his people, okay, meaning Lord of Covenants, okay, he was the one that was called upon to be known as the Lord of Covenants, and basically making him the Lord of Pacts in the demonic sense within the Goetic terms, okay. Now, what's also interesting to note is that in the Zohar, Baal is said to be in equal rank to the archangel Raphael. Okay. That was something that was kind of surprising and interesting at the same time when you delve into his mythology. Now, within Syria and Persia, which I mentioned before, there are many who carry the name Baal. You remember what I said about the connection between Baal and Astaroth? This is where I want you to pay attention, okay? Because there are many Baals and there are many Astaroths, apparently, okay? For an example, El was the Baal who was in charge of birth and rebirth. Okay. And Mot was the god of death. He was said to have slain El and sent him to the underworld. Now, Baal's sister, Aneth, was basically the same as how should I say this? Aphrodite, okay, the goddess of love. Okay, basically, she was the god of love or the demonic of love. Okay, that was something that was pretty interesting to get into as well. So the Canaanites worshipped Baal by sacrificing children through fire. Okay, basically, they burned them to death. Now, the text does not say if they were alive or dead, but basically, you can take that as meaning one or the other. Okay. Now we know that Moloch became known as the Prince of Valley of the Tears because of the way that the calf was used as a giant boiler, and became associated with the collector of burnt souls through the burning of the loved ones as in human sacrifice. So in this case, basically, one might say that his mythos was derived from Baal. Okay. Now, Baal Bereth is also associated with the nuns of Ludan possessions as well. and he was considered to be the prince of the cherubim. Okay. Now, what's ironic though is this is just biblical, not just into the grimoire sense, but when you get into things like, say, the let's go back even further. You go into Chaldean literature. Okay, you go into the Chaldean culture, which predates Canaanite. Okay, this is more ancient than the biblical Canaanite culture. Okay, we see a demon lord or a goddess known as Dagon. Now, Dagon was literally without rank, but yet sits in the hierarchy of the underworld. Okay, no rank, but is considered to be and viewed as one of the hierarchy. Now, what's ironic here is that it was said that Dagon gave birth to Baal, whose name translated into Lord. Now, you notice how we just went full circle right there. Full circle. And this is just a little taste of the information that is out there. Now, a lot of times when you get into devil worship and you get into demonolatry, you get into Satanism, you get into any form of spiritualism where you're worshiping beings. A lot of times you're going to see people represent Balaam or Balaam, and you're going to see Belphegor, and you're going to see Baal Bereth, and that of Baal, as in different beings. But it all comes down to the translations from the region that his name or their names were taken from. Okay. And this is something that's very cool because this is something I've been studying for many years now. And not just me, so many others have as well gone into these ancient cultures and have been discussing these beings. Not in the same way I am, but just saying, people are talking about them as being separate entities, different entities. We know that the Grand Grimoire views Balbereth or Beelzebub, Beelzebul, as being Lord of Flies. Well, what did I just say about Baalzebub? Baalzebub, Baalzebuth, Baalzebub, not Beelzebub, but both being translated into Lord of Flies. Okay, so the Lord of the Covenant, or the Covenant of the treaties, the Lord or Prince of the treaties. Okay, now I find this very interesting because of the fact that when we get into Baal, he's considered a great king, but yet he's also a prince. Huh. Throughout this series of the 9 kings of the Goetia, you've seen how some of them have 2 different titles, come from 2 different perspectives. Hey, Waldo. Well, I've been thinking about that, Waldo. And I'm thinking about going into the 7 princes of sin and showing where they came from and how they came about. It's either that or the 7 crown princes of the air. Maybe the 7 Olympic spirits. I'm not sure yet. I'm leaning more towards one of the other groups of entities. Because there's so many that I've come across over the years. I mean, like I said, you have the nine kings, you have the seven crown princes of the air, the crown princes of sin, you have the seven Olympic spirits, you have the 36 deacons of destruction. Okay, you got quite a few here. You're not just mentioning the infernal, knights and the inner court. But there's so many of them that is downright fascinating. I mean, you have kings, and then you have infernal kings. You have knights, and then you have infernal knights. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot that you can go over, and there's a lot that we can teach and to bring to light. Okay, and as you can probably tell, Waldo, I have really been studying demonology and angelology and all this stuff for a very long time, and I've got a lot of information that I can share. It's just you know, breaking it down into lessons. So, I mean, and I'm glad you like the content, Waldo, as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of picking one and going with it and seeing where everything leads. But yeah, I mean, with the Nine Kings, however, there are a lot of things that they can do. I believe it was E.A. Coetting in one of his videos that actually broke these three down into three categories: persuasion, science, and the arts. Okay. That was something I've never come across before until I started looking at them and I started breaking down what they do and how they can do it. And it was like, you know what? He's on to something here. Breaking these three down into these three portions really does shine a light. One might say it's the light of Lucifer, if you wish, the day star, if you're talking Phosphoros in ancient Greek, okay, or Apollo in Roman, okay. Now, or Ra in Egyptian, you know. So I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that you can go under, and it's very fascinating to see who they were before the fall, but most importantly, what they're capable of doing as a group of very powerful entities. I've worked with a lot of these beings, but not all of them. If I've called on them, it's normally as a majority. Okay. Basically opening up the ritual for all nine of these kings. And I can tell you by firsthand experience, I have never seen a group of beings that have really paved the way, one way or the other, to any request that I've put forth. Okay. Not only have I called on them as a collective, I have seen them open up doors that would have basically been my downfall. I have seen them literally just do things. My better half is a Baptist, okay? She grew up Baptist. And even she was afraid of what was going on due to her, how should I say this? Let's just call it carelessness, okay? Lack of judgment, even, okay? And I called on these nine kings, and to see what they've done for her as well. Even she keeps coming back to me, the practitioner who works with these beings. Now, she doesn't even go to church no more. And if she does, it's once in a blue moon. But for the most part, I can tell you firsthand that what these beings have done in my life and hers, even in our sons' lives, okay, all of this negativity, all of these attacks that were against us from the get-go just vanished, just literally vanished. Anything to do with, say, oh, I don't know, let's say her legal issues due to the car accident that turned out not to be her fault. Okay? To just simply opening a doorway for a career, to a better apartment situation is magnificent. Okay? You call on, like I said, you call on Paimon, you call on Beleth, you call on Belial, and these are beings of persuasion. You get into the sciences, you have Zagon, you have Vimy, and you have Persian. Okay? These three, magnificent how they utilize the sciences and the arts together. Okay? Not to mention when you work with Asmodeus, you work with Baal, okay, and you work with Balaam. You combine all of these. You're not just dealing with their strengths, but they're counteracting each other's weaknesses. Kind of like you would do in a relationship with your better half. Okay? Trust me when I tell you, going into these beings, learning about them, building a relationship with them, offering sacrifices and offering them gifts, building that repertoire is something that will benefit you in the long run. There's a lot of sources that speak on them, as you've noticed throughout this series. There's a lot that different groups today have spoken on. Okay? You look at the Book of Kings by Reverend Cain, a spiritual or theistic Satanist. Okay? He put it more in a scriptural perspective, kind of just telling how they were given their rank through their loyalty, through their dedication and their commitment to a cause. Okay? You go into Michael W. Ford's Goetia, his work, okay, within these pact makings and these spiritual beings of the Goetic spirits. And you're going to see the exact same thing, except for you're going to see how they appear, what they can do for you. Okay? And most of all, the Luciferian way of conjuring them. Okay? You go into the Goetia or the Lesser Keys of Solomon. Okay? No matter what text you go by, doesn't matter if it's modern or in the past, you're going to get a better perception of who these beings are, what they're capable of doing, and how to approach them. Okay? You're going to find out what incense attracts them or excites them to gain their attention. You're going to find out what kind of offering or sacrifice is needed to work with them. A lot of times, it's just as simple as blasphemy. Other times, it's a matter of offering your services to them in exchange for them helping you out. Okay? Other times, it's a matter of wine. Okay? Just simple wine, maybe a blood offering. Okay? Bloodletting. There's a lot of things that you can do with the correct knowledge. Okay? And like I just shown in these videos on the nine kings of the Goetia, you've seen how many different texts have different perspectives of who these beings are and what they can do for you. More importantly, you've also seen the layover or the crossover of the texts themselves. A lot of them are different, but there are those few that overlap one another. Kind of like the ley lines, if you think about it. But it's up to you on how you want to approach them. It's up to you on how you worship them. The more you put in, the more you get out of it. And I can tell you, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. And it's going to benefit you in the long run. All right? Have a good night. And until next time, have a good one.